I wanted to say that, normally I set aside Thursday to ask the Lord what's the message for the week, and He outlines for me what scriptures to use, and then Friday is a day to dwell upon it and see what other insights might be gathered, and sometimes the insights don't come until the service, and sometimes the song, and something extra will come into play. And that's a process. I enjoy the process. I enjoy the study. Except this week. This week was unusual in that I prayed about the message, and I thought I understood what it was supposed to be. And so I said, but Lord, I don't want to give that message. And so give me another message instead. And I fumbled my way through the Bible again and again and again, and no such, as we say, no such luck. So I thought, well, but maybe tomorrow I'll get something different, and that just wasn't to be. So, what's the problem? Well, they say, to talk about something that you don't think you're too good at, personally, is awkward, because deep down you feel like, well, I don't do such a great job of that myself, or at least it's a struggle. So, but we're going to learn about that a little further on, just to stimulate your curiosity and keep you awake, and keep you awake. Okay, let's. My wife is over there saying, "Uh-oh." She doesn't know. She never knows what the sermon is going to be about. All right, neither does anybody else, just between me and the Lord. Okay, let's pray. Holy Spirit in heaven, we do thank you that you commune with us, you communicate with us, and behold, all things have become new. You wrote your scriptures, for they are written on the tablets of our heart, and you had them to be spoken by the prophets and the scribes and Moses himself. And then you preserved them over many, many centuries and organized them, chapters and verses and various ways of editing what's in and what's out. It's just an amazing, marvelous thing over a period of so many, actually thousands of years, and all available to us. Make your word become alive to us as it was to the prophets and the writers. We pray, Comforter in heaven, that you would speak to us today, for that's the reason why we're here. And we pray in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay, let's turn to Numbers, the 12th chapter. And we're going to start off with verse 3. Okay? Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men who were upon the face of the earth. This word meek, it's always intrigued me because I've often equated it with the word meek as humble. Actually, it is a different word because it has a somewhat different meaning. Meek means mild, gentle, and not resentful. And that's slightly different than humble. But in any case, Moses excelled at these qualities beyond others. And the Lord spoke suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron and unto Miriam, "Come out, the three of you, into the tabernacle of the congregation." And they three came out. And the Lord came down in a pillar of a cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. Okay, all three are gathered together. They're in the tabernacle. God's got this important meeting that he's calling. Verse 6, "And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him I will speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark sentences and speeches, but at the similitude of the Lord shall behold. Wherefore there were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses." So they're saying to this is really being addressed to Aaron and Miriam. He's saying, look, Moses is different. I do have others, and I do speak through them, but Moses is different. I speak to him in a different way. I speak to him in a more personal way, mouth to mouth. And now, what's going on here? How is it that if I am going to speak so directly to Moses and on such a personal and intimate way, how is it that you're not afraid to speak against him? Verse 9, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. So God is put out. And the cloud departed from the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Wow. Instant case of leprosy. It wasn't something that crept on. At first she got a blemish, and then it's more blemish, and so on. Instantly, she's got leprosy. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. So Aaron gets it right away, that there's a connection between what God said. Here's the reason why I'm put out with you. You're speaking against Moses. And Aaron gets it right away because God said, I'm put out with you. You've sinned. And Aaron says, I guess we heard that right, because look at what's happened to my sister Miriam. She is filled with leprosy. Verse 12, let her not be as one dead, whom the flesh is half consumed when he cometh out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, Heal her now, O God, I beseech thee. So here in these verses, there is a connection made, a very solid connection between leprosy and speaking against Moses. Okay? So there's a connection. There was a spiritual malady. At the time, Moses was the constituted government. I mean, there was a theocracy going. Moses is the government at that point. There's no judges. Nobody else has been appointed. It's just Moses. So all of the Lord's authority is all focused in on Moses, and they are coming against Moses, so they are coming against God. Now, maybe they didn't do the math, but that's what was going on. And Aaron gets it. Now, what was the reaction of Moses to this? Moses, being the meekest man that there was, he is not resentful. Rather, what he does, he falls on his face and prays to the Lord, forgive her, overlook it, see your way clear, she's my sister. And, Lord, if I choose not to hold it against her, then don't you hold it against her, because, Lord, you are gracious in all things. I can imagine that that's the prayer of Moses. And so what happens is Miriam is sent from without the camp. She is not permitted in the camp for 7 days, it says in verse 14. It says, let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received again. Okay? So when the leprosy goes, she can come back in. Okay, well, at least the leprosy is gonna go. Now, suppose it was that we had, leprosy is just not an American disease. We just, don't hear much about it, but in more primitive societies it is. But suppose we actually had somebody walking through the door, okay, and they had a sign on them saying, unclean, unclean, and leper, leper. I mean, you can imagine that we would say, I think I can skip services today. I'll be out of here, okay. But suppose it wasn't leprosy. Suppose it was smallpox. Suppose it was chicken pox. I mean, whatever it was, if somebody came in with a malady, with a sickness, we would make tracks to separate ourselves from them. Okay. Here, there's a connection between leprosy and a spiritual malady of coming against God's representative, Moses. So, I'm taking it that the physical representation of this rebellion is leprosy. And that today there's leprosy, a spiritual leprosy. And though we can't see it, this is a lesson in spiritual leprosy as well as physical leprosy. There is such a thing as spiritual leprosy. Let's talk a little more about that. Let's turn to the New Covenant, to chapter 5 and verse 12, where we learn a little more about leprosy. Chapter 5, book of Luke, verse 12, and it came to pass, this is Yeshua, and it came to pass when he, Yeshua, was in a certain city, behold, a man full of leprosy, who seeing Yeshua fell on his face and besought him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And he put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately the leprosy departed from him. And he charged him, don't tell anybody, but go and show thyself to the priest, offer for the cleansing according to Moses' commandment, for a testimony unto him. So, go to the priest, be thankful, make your sacrifice, etc., but don't run around telling everybody. Well, this man was so thrilled to be rid of the leprosy that he ran around and told everybody. So he just couldn't contain himself that he was cured. You can imagine, you've got leprosy. You finally make your way perhaps through the crowd to get to Yeshua, and you say, you know, you can heal me. I know you can heal me. I have confidence you can heal me. But will you heal me? Can you help me in this way? There's nothing I can do. Please redeem my situation and heal me of my leprosy. And Yeshua says, sure thing, but don't tell everybody. Verse 15 says, but so much as the more went there a fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. And so here we have, let's call him Chaim. He doesn't have a name. But let's say that Chaim went and did this, and then Chaim spills to everybody in the community, which proves to us that this was not something of imagination. Somebody just saying, well, before, you know, I had leprosy for a while, and now I don't anymore, and look at me, because Yeshua favored me, and he cured me of my leprosy. No, it spread abroad. A lot of people knew this man had leprosy, and now they can see he no longer does. And so everybody every leper in the country wants to come and find Yeshua, every single one of them. And what about the other diseases? Hey, if he can cure leprosy, he can cure this, he can cure that. I just got to find this guy. I got to go after this guy. I mean, I got a major problem in life, and he's got the goods that can cure me, and so on. So it spread abroad, so much so that Yeshua had to kind of almost, I don't want to say sneak around, but he had to be discreet as to how he traveled, because the crowds were just after him. So there's physical leprosy and there's spiritual leprosy. And what comes? Where does this come from? Where does the spiritual leprosy come from? Well, what was the leprosy source in our verses about Moses, Miriam, and Aaron? It was the rebellion. It was the rebellion that caused the leprosy. So, okay, we got rebellion, we got leprosy, and there's a connection. That's why I'm saying there's got to be something here called spiritual leprosy. The things which are physical also have a spiritual counterpart. And so what it's saying is that rebellion is spiritual leprosy. I want to assert that because to me it's a truism. I hope it's a truism for you too. Spiritual leprosy. And now comes the part why I didn't want to give the message. One of the reasons why I didn't want to is because I have not done so well in this department about rebellion. Now I'm going to be more transparent. I try to be transparent. You know why I try to be transparent? Because if I show my vulnerabilities to you, I'm hoping that will allow you to show your vulnerabilities to me more willingly. Also, if I set myself up on some kind of a higher order of human being, it's going to lead to disappointment, and then he's no good, I'm not going there anymore. I don't want, okay. So I want to explain, you didn't know me as a young boy, obviously. But as a young boy, as I probably have said before, I had a father problem. And I didn't really learn until later I also had a mother problem. The problem was my mother was very much dissatisfied with her husband. And as the oldest son, she would, from the earliest age, I mean, it couldn't have been more than, as long as I can remember, she would tell me of her dissatisfactions with my father. He's not personal enough. He doesn't show any emotion. He's not affectionate. He's not this. He's not that. He doesn't pay any attention to family, and so on. Ret-tat-tat-tat, 4 years old and 6 years old and 10 years old and so on. My mother is telling me what a bad man my father was. Huh? So I grew up, okay, not feeling real good about my father. And it sponsored a rebellion, a very strong rebellion in me. Also, it wasn't that she was so incorrect, because I didn't feel loved. I still, to this day, don't know whether my father loved me or not. It's just the truth of the matter. I suppose he probably did, but couldn't express it. All right, so I didn't know where I stood with him. The combination, he's a bad man, he's a lousy man, I need to get a divorce from him, and so on. And she didn't. She had 4 sons, but all the time, I'm 12 years old, I'm 18 years old, I'm 20 years old, I'm 30 years old, all the time, every time. And this was my impression of what being a man was. It was a negative blueprint about being what a man was. Now, he also had virtuous things. He was an honest man, his word was good. All right, he never would stray from the marriage with infidelity. He had a lot of virtues, but he just couldn't emit love. Okay, so I turned out to be a very rebellious young man, told off all my teachers. I just loved telling people off. And long about the age of 14 years old, I developed a very strong case of ulcerative colitis. A friend of mine just about died from it. And I was taking 16 pills a day for my ulcerative colitis. And I'm going to the doctor once a week. And I'm tired all the time from the medicine. This is Paul as a little boy, 14 years old. Okay? So, finally the doctor says, look, I can treat you, Paul. He says, but the problem here is you have turned your anger against your body. You have a psychosomatic disease, and you are simply crying out of your anus. You said a word. It's medical. Okay. But and I thought, oh. So I was told at that time, look, if you will let your anger out, you'll get cured. Really? I won't have to make these visits? No. So I took the advice, and I then started telling everybody off. Everybody got a piece of my mind. I held nothing back from anybody. You knew Paul was going to tell you off. If you irritated Paul was going to tell you that you irritated him. Whatever it was, that's Paul. Are we all loving me so far? All right. And I was cured. I was cured. That did it. It was correct advice. But of course, I'm now this super rebellious guy because anger's good for me. It's healthy for me. And so I continued that way. God bless her. I married somebody, and she was good medicine. Still is good medicine. And I really knew what it was to have love visited upon my life in an unconditional way. Thank you, Susan. I'm going along, I become a believer. I think that played a role in becoming a believer because I was hungry for a father's love. That father was going to be with me and know about me, and I would know more about him, and he would know more about me, like I wanted with my physical father, but it was never there. I think that played a very significant role in my becoming a believer. I wanted a father. Okay? I wanted the love of a father. Well, I'm a believer for about 8 years, and comes 1979, and my father really put me out in a very substantial way, a very tangible way, and I don't need to deviate as to what the instance was, but I decided I'm going to tell him off. First time, because I was in awe of him. I was afraid of him. Now, mind you, I'm 36 years old, but I'm 37 years old, but I'm still afraid of my father. Okay? I still want his attention, still want his approval. Nothing's changed since I'm a boy, but there it is. But I have had it. And I'm 8 years old, a believer. I'm not supposed to be that way. But I told him off. I told him off, but good. He sat there. I insisted. I wouldn't let him get out of the chair. For 2 hours, I told him off. And I was not whispering. I was not calm. I was yelling at him, and I gave it to him both barrels. Now you can imagine how it was to feel to be Paul's father. Maybe he probably loved me very much, and now I hear I'm telling him off, and so on. So, well, he was devastated, and obviously that was not a good thing to do. But boy, did I feel good. Later, I learned that he went to my mother, Sylvia, and said, "Am I that man? Am I that monster?" Now, I just said the things that she had told me for all of these years, for over 3 decades, and I was just repeating what she told me. Tell me, Sylvia, am I that monster that Paul says I am? Oh, no, honey, you are not. Okay. No, you are a wonderful and kindly man, and so on and so forth. And I just don't know what got into Paul. Well, that was it. The fabric was torn and so on. It took a while for my father to come around, and in the meantime, but I had to come. It had to be that he wasn't going to come around until I did some internal work. Now I'm going to tell you another unflattering story. I told you I'm really not looking forward to today's message. A few months later, about 2 months later, I'm at a conference, a National Alliance, Messianic Alliance conference, and there's a man there, Moshe Rosen. He's the founder of Jews for Jesus. And his approach, I'm dedicating my life to the Messianic movement, and his approach is, let's get out there on the streets, let's grab them by the collar, let's get high publicity. And it just wasn't my style. I was an early advocate of Messianic congregations, kind of a soft sell. You come on in here, and now by virtue of coming, I know that you are at least shopping. And I felt like these two ideas of how to reach the Jewish people were at odds. And besides which, he was an important and famous person, and he needed to be dethroned in my mind, because I tell everybody off, don't I? Of course I do. Now, he's a big man. He's like 6'4" and 400 pounds. He is a big man. But I see him at the conference, and I go over, and I'm going to dethrone him in my mind. So I slapped him on the back as hard as I could. I said, "Hello, Moish, how are you? Are you snowing everybody? Have you got it?" And I let him have it. No reason. He hadn't said anything. I just needed to dethrone him in my mind. Not a very nice Paul. He started backing away. He didn't argue with me. Just started backing away and to withdraw from me. Later, a woman came to me and said, Paul, are you familiar with the scripture that says, touch not the Lord's anointed? Moish is anointed by the Lord. Look at what happened, how he started this group. It kind of formed around him. That's the Lord that did that. And you attacked the Lord's anointed. You might consider that for the future. She said in a very gentle way. Well, it really grabbed me. And I began to earnestly pray, and I thought, well, look at what I'm doing. He didn't deserve that. And why did you go pick a fight with him anyhow? Paul, that's your problem, not his problem. And I began to work on me. Okay? And a profound thing began to happen. And I resolved that I can't be that person anymore. I'm going to have to do something about me. The problem is not with all these other people I'm telling off. okay? But I need to do something about me. And so a resolve came within me. Paul, you may feel like it, but how you feel and what you feel like saying, maybe the Lord doesn't, maybe that's not pleasing to the Lord. Maybe you ought to try doing this differently. So from that day until this, I do try. How good I am of it, well, I try. But I try. So, how am I doing, honey? Okay. All right. So that's Paul. And I'm still trying. But as I say, I'm not too good at this rebellion department in the first place. So I should pick this for a message. Lord, can't we negotiate to a different message? Now I'm going to tell you another story. Okay? This one doesn't have to do with me, but it's about a friend of mine. Okay? And it has to do with leprosy. I have I sold my business in Washington, D.C., and I received a job offer to move to Philadelphia, which we did. We joined a local congregation there, and lo and behold, we begin to notice that in the congregation, that there was a lot of criticism of the leadership, a lot. It seemed as though the head of the congregation was an older man, and his son was about 35 years old, but most everybody in the congregation was about 35 years old, and he was just one of the crowd. But by virtue of this man's sickly condition, the son was being raised up to take his place. And of course, he was a single guy and just one of the crowd, and why is he being raised up? I mean, just because you come from, your mother and father, are you the right leader for our congregation? And this was a large congregation. At the time, it was the largest Messianic congregation in the country. It had about 400 people. This is now in the early 1980s, 1982, 1983. And we now are living in Philadelphia, and we now see that there is trouble in River City. And it's all over. Everybody, there's a fellowship of discontent all the time. Wherever you socialized, the subject was going to come around to this young punk who's going to be our leader. And how do we feel about that? Well, this was not too good. And the worst of it was we were beginning to listen, and we didn't want to listen. One of the people who was a leader in this, I'm going to call him Dave. I'm going to stay away from names here, but I'm going to call him Dave. And Dave was working for me. And I said to him at some juncture, Dave, this is not good for you. This is not good for your family. At this point, you can't help yourself. I think you should withdraw from the congregation and not take anybody with you. I think you've spent years building up this congregation. Now don't tear it down. I think you should withdraw from the congregation. Well, Paul, what am I going to do? I have to be employed, and so on and so forth. I said, Dave, I'm going to reassign you to a different sales territory, and you leave here in good shape, and just depart on your own, and so on. I told him that he had a case of spiritual leprosy. So he says, well, if you can reassign me, I'd be glad to go. So he left, moved to a different place that I had assigned him, and he became something of a success in his new territory. Okay. We moved from Philadelphia because it was actually a foreign corporation that sold fitness equipment in all the other countries, but not in the United States, and I came recommended as somebody to start a U.S. subsidiary. But I saw the fitness industry was not in Philadelphia. The fitness industry belonged in Southern California, and that's how we move out here to these friendly lands, was for the fitness industry. Years go by. My friend Dave, he has a hard time, but in time, and he does his occupation, And he becomes a Messianic rabbi, has his own congregation, builds up his own congregation, has some problems in his congregation because maybe some people don't approve of him. You know, sowing and reaping, you know, he had to deal with that some. And so everything is left. The pastor, the young punk, he's raised up. So my friend Dave, he's out. He's done. Everybody thinks he's done for. Nobody will hear of him again. But the pastor, I'm not going to call him Messianic rabbi, I'm going to say the pastor, he's raised up and becomes the president of the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America. And then he's raised up as we formed an organization of Messianic rabbis to ordain, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're up to about 1987. And who's the first head of this rabbinical council? This same pastor. So for the reason there are dissensions among you is so God can show of whom he's approved, that the sound among you may be brought to the fore. Dave moved down 2 pegs, and the pastor moved up 2 pegs. It worked out over a period of 5 years. Fast forward to about not quite 2 years ago. I'm at a conference. I've remained friendly with a good friend of Dave's, and I'm at the conference, and I said, Dave, I said, you know, you're doing really good in your congregation. But a man who has what you have, you should have been raised up a long time ago into national leadership. But I see there's a problem. He says, yeah, I've wondered how come nobody has confidence in me beyond the local level. I'm here, you know, I'm doing this for 30, 35 years, and nobody upholds me outside my congregation. I said, Dave, you remember I said something about leprosy? I said, you know, Dave, you're getting along, you're running your congregation, but maybe there's still some leprosy. Maybe you need to do something about it. He says, what are you talking about, Paul? Yeah, I said, Dave, remember what took place in 1983. You're still suffering from the same leprosy towards the same pastor. I said, but there is a cure for your leprosy. What's that? I said, well, Dave, it's time for you. Now, this is 30 years later. 30 years. And it's still the same issue. Nothing's been resolved. It's still in his mind and still in the pastor's mind. 30 years later. But nobody talks about it. Nobody's talked about this in 30 years. So I said, Dave, here's what you got to do to cure your leprosy. You got to write a letter. It's got to be a thoroughgoing, comprehensive letter itemizing all the things you did wrong and accept full responsibility. You may have only been 50% responsible, but you need to own up to your 50%. You may have 70% responsible, you got to own up to your 70%. You may have been, the other guy may have 9, but you got to, if you're only 10% responsible, you got to own up completely to your 10%. But forget about the percentages of who's responsible. You got to take responsibility, and you need to apologize for what you did. Forget about what anybody else did, just what you did, because you're the one with the leprosy. And Dave, don't hold back, because there's no sense writing this letter and embarrassing yourself if it's going to be kind of half-hearted. You have to assume that this letter is going to meet its mark. Okay? No half measures. If you're going to do it, go all out. I mean all out. No compromise, etc. No, I'm sorry, but. This is it. If you're going to do it, and I said there's one more, and I said it has to be in writing, because to go and sin publicly, but I'm so sorry. That won't do it. If you commit a difficulty publicly, then the apology, there has to be some way, there has to be a cost to it. So I said, so I would put it in writing so that it's that man's property. He can do with it what he wants. He may put it in a drawer, but it's his property. If he wants to tell other people, he can. But it's his property. I said the second thing that you got to do, Dave, is send him a check for $1,000. He says, Paul, you know our financial condition. We don't have an extra $1,000 to write him a check. I said, yes, but it needs to prove sincerity. And words are cheap. We all know your financial situation, and all the more so that when you write him a check for $1,000, it's going to add meaning to your words that they are sincere. It's proof of sincerity. Well, Paul, we got to think about that. We got to pray about that. Well, they did it. They did it. Exactly what I suggested. They said, we wouldn't do this, Paul, except it's coming from you. Okay? I mean, we're friends, and I'm speaking, into their life. So they go ahead, and they do it. And, all right, we did it. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. The pastor served for a number of years as the founding father of the Rabbinical Association, left it, handed off to other people. But the Rabbinical Association grew to hundreds of Messianic congregational leaders. It became a very difficult job, and it got handed to other people. Nobody wanted to do it for more than 2, 3, 4 years, and then that's enough. That's a volunteer job. But it turns out that in the absence of anybody else being available or being willing to take this job, they went to the founder and said, will you take this again? It's too big, it's too much, and nobody else will, you're the father of this thing. It really needs a lot of attention. So he becomes the head of the Rabbinical Association yet again, and now it comes time for elections for a national office. Now, the Messianic Jewish Alliance of America is the only place in the Messianic movement where you can be elected to office. There are other groups that can raise a lot of money, and therefore they're a big outfit, but you can't get elected to anything. They're just a ministry. But this is the only place where you can be elected to public office. Turns out that in that particular year, I was asked to be chairman of the nominating committee. Okay, fine, I listened to the different people saying who should be elected, et cetera, to put together a slate. Who calls me but the pastor? This is a year or so after the letter, et cetera. The pastor calls me, and he says, Paul, he says, I have a very strong suggestion. I don't want to take no for an answer. I want Dave to be elected to national office. He says he deserves it. It's been too long. He's a credit to our movement. Look at his success. Look at his family success. And he's now selling me on that this guy, Dave, is supposed to be on the slate. You see, what a change, huh? I mean, long forgotten about the letter and the check, but he didn't forget. So, all right, so I talked to some other people, and the pastor thinks, yeah, now comes time, and so he's elected. He's elected because he really had done a lot of things over the years that needed to be recognized. But without that pastor selling everybody on it, because he didn't just call me, he called a lot of other people too. We got to get Dave on the committee. Dave deserves it. He's out there selling for Dave, all right? Now, Dave's elected. We come to the first meeting, and it's time to appoint the members of the steering committee for the Rabbinical Association. So that's a committee decision. It takes a lot of votes. Everybody's got different ideas about who should run the Rabbinical Association. Well, it turns out that the pastor is in the meeting, and he's now selling Dave. Everybody's got to know about Dave's virtues, et cetera, and he sells everybody on Dave not only being elected to public office on the executive committee, but being on the rabbinical committee, the rabbinical leadership group. Okay, there are only 3 people that's done with. I mean, no, both at the same time. Can you see what happened? Can you see what happened once Dave was cleansed of his leprosy? That's a true story. That really happened. I'm not exaggerating. That's it in detail. There was a spiritual leprosy. Dave was plagued with it for 30 years. He never really got to where he wanted to get to. Nobody had ever said anything. Nobody leaned on him. It's just that they didn't have confidence in him. Okay? But everybody knew that the guy who he had smeared was now advocating for him, and that sold everybody. Is there a lesson in this about the rebellion? About and so on. Notice, like Moses, that the pastor was not resentful. He actually took it up, just like Moses did on Miriam's behalf. Okay, so it is that the pastor took up the cudgels of Dave, okay, and prayed to the Lord and really put his shoulder to the wheel on Dave's behalf. That's a true story. I just, the whole thing makes me feel so good about both Dave and the pastor. And so it seemed to me like I probably spent too long, but I like doing it anyhow. So, now what could have happened, what reasonably could have happened, is this young pastor could have, the scriptures say, mark those that cause division among you. He could have marked them. He could have said, hey, this is no good, etc. It's done maybe a little too quickly in many congregations. Now we have to turn to 2 Corinthians, the 11th chapter. 2 Corinthians, the 11th chapter. And verse 12. 2 Corinthians 11 and verse 12 says, but what I do, this is the Apostle Paul speaking, but what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we are. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Messiah. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So this has some currency in our broader society. It's not just a personal matter, a personal leprosy, okay, in a family or in a congregation or in a city, but there is a great spirit of rebellion that has been loosed upon our land, and the principles are the same. I want to submit to you that our country has increasingly been leprous. The rebellion is so very strong, and contagious. It's a severe contagion. It used to be that we used to get the evening news for a half an hour. It was boring. They talk about the weather. They talk about sports, right? Who won the World Series? Who won the pennant? And then there was some foreign news and some domestic, but it all had to be brought into a Cronkite half hour, okay? And that's the news we got, and we were happy with that. Not so today. Today we have cable news, and if you're like me, you are switching from channel to channel. I just can't, they're having a commercial. Go, hurry and switch the channels. I don't have to watch. No, they're having a commercial too. Switch to the other channel. And so you flip from channel to channel because you want to get the dirt. But the news is always about tearing somebody down. Somebody important needs to be pulled down. They have a title. Let's pull them down. They have an importance. Let's pull them down. And you know what? I'm not saying that's a Republican virtue or a Democratic virtue. I wasn't too thrilled with it about Obama. I mean, they did the same thing with Obama to the degree, well, some people, depends on which channel you watched. Okay? But still, there is the spirit behind this, behind the human beings. There is a spiritual world out there that is causing it. That in our society, all right, there is something on a less than conscious level of everybody seems to want to pull somebody down. I'm dissatisfied with my life, so somebody's responsible, and they need to be put down. Let's get rid of them. And that seems to be so common now. We don't even notice it anymore. It's just assumed that if you have a title, if you have some importance, if you have some dignity, if you're wealthy, if you are prominent, if you're famous, we need to pull you down. And it is now all the time, and we're on it every hour of our waking day. I mean, shouldn't there be some hours I'm not watching television? Whatever I'm doing, the television is going on in the background, because if I hear that there's something important, I want to zero out. And that's what's going on in our country. I'm calling it leprosy on the part of our country. Both parties. You see, the human condition doesn't know if it's a Democrat or a Republican. You see, the fallen condition, it's operative in Democrats and Republicans. And behind the Democrats and Republicans and others, there is a spiritual world out there that is pulling all of the strings. That's what's going on, is the spiritual world. You know how it says, on earth as it is in heaven? There is, which is it? Does it happen in heaven first and then it plays out on earth? Or is heaven adjustable according to what we do here? I'm not sure about that, but they're related. As to which is causative, but they're related. So we have to, as believers, we have to say, wait a minute, am I getting sucked into something here? I need to be cognizant, I need to be aware of the fact of the spiritual world that's behind these people who are doing this, myself included. So when we're seeing everybody torn down, one politician against another, one famous person against another, one commentator against another, one newspaper reporter against another, everything is pull down, squash, etc. And what is it that's really at the core of the spiritual matter, the spiritual leprosy? Well, what it is, it goes back to the Garden of Eden. Back to the Garden of Eden. The snake said, you can exalt, you don't trust him, you can become a god also. And so I'm promising you that you can be raised up. You can be exalted too. And later we're going to learn in Isaiah 14 about how Lucifer said, hey, God, we can share this throne. Just move over a little bit. Let's do the egalitarian thing, and so on. I want to exalt myself. Don't you know I'm the most beautiful of all the angels? I lead the music in heaven, and therefore I should be equal with you. Why not? And you like me, you created me, so let's share this throne. God says nothing doing. That's the thin edge of the wedge, and I'm not going for it, because today you want to share it, and tomorrow you're going to want my throne. But there's the same thing. If it's the Garden of Eden, if it's Isaiah 14, it is the same inner compulsion. We're seemingly stuck with it, that we are part of this overall thing. It has infected humanity, which is to pull down. Now the Bible, God's Word, has suppressed it, but God's Word is under fire. It's under fire. There's now a thing that there's developing very rapidly, a prohibition against the Bible, a prohibition against God. It says separation of church and state. That's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. The Johnson Amendment that talks about that churches are at risk of losing their 501, the precious 501c3 tax exemption. We can't get rid of that, and so on and so on. That's not in the Constitution either. In 1973 there was, and so on. So we've neutralized the pulpit, that people at the pulpit are afraid to say boo about anything about national life. I mean, we're being compromised, we're being seduced all the time. Why? Because we need to get rid of this impediment of the Bible people, and to the point where we're all cowed. We're all cowed by the people who will say that we're not wonderful people. You're not wonderful people. Take your pick. Which am I today? Well, of course I'm racial. Of course I'm a homophobe. Of course. Of course, I'm sexist, and I don't like women, and I'm all of these bad things. Yeah, well, that's all right, because on the other side, they're saying, you're a socialist, you're trying to steal from me, etc. But whatever it is, to find a reason to down the other guy. And this is an urge, and it's gaining momentum. And what is there to stop it? What is there to stop it? What opposition is there? It's only the Bible people that stand in opposition to all of this. That's us, the Bible people. It's getting increasingly difficult to stand out front and be willing to say the things of the Bible. Not hint at them, but to actually say, that's a sin.
I mean, when's the last time on television that you or in the newspaper heard anybody say anything about something that's unnatural as being a sin? You just don't ever hear that. That's taboo, etc. We need to go into the wind, into the teeth of it, and be willing to speak the Word of God. It's powerful. We have the power. Have we ever stopped to realize that the devil, he don't got no power? He needs to persuade us. We have the power, and so he wants to infect us, motivate us, change us, and to use our power for his cause, for the expansion of his kingdom. And so often we fall for it. We fall for it. And what is my protection against that? Well, I can read the Bible. He don't like that. He'll stay away from that. I can sing the praises of Yeshua. He'll stay away from that. I can pray. Oh, he don't want to be anywhere near me when I'm praying. I can be in fellowship with other people. And you know what? Increasingly, I don't want to be with lepers. I don't want to be with rebellious people because I know my own tendencies. My own tendencies is to get snared by it. And the contagion, I just need to stay away from it. So, but we do have our protections. I say, we've signed up for a program, and we've said, I'm on God's side. We need to let the world know about that in an uncompromising way, not in an apologetic way. You know, I understand on Thursday night there were 7 people from Mohav Shalom out there saying, who was the greatest rabbi? We're out there. We're out there with the homeless people as well. And we're here. And when we get an opportunity, you know what? It may, in the short run, it may be awkward for us to do it. But God promises us a blessing. Last scriptures. 1 John 3:22. 1 John 3:22. This is my third final scripture. 1 John 3:22 says, and whosoever asks, we receive of him because we have kept his commandments and do those things which are pleasing in his sight. There is a reward. God says there is a reward for when we stand up for him, when we stand by his commandments. When we do the things of God, God is not a cheat. There is a reward in it. He promises us a reward. We may not be able to see the connection between what we did and the reward, but the reward is surely there. And now for the final scripture. Okay? And in my third conclusion, or are we up to 4 now? Okay, James 1:25, just to rivet this home. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer, he who is a doer of this word, who? The doer of the word, this man shall be blessed in his deed. Okay? Hey, we're on the incentive plan. We're on the incentive plan whereby, if we will do these things, there is a reward. Who promised the reward? Well, the creator of the universe, the guy who wrote the scriptures, the guy who died on our behalf, the guy who is in charge of everything, knows everything by his providence to the infinite detail, every single detail of our life. He's in control of everything, all right? And he's the one who made the promise that if we will do his commandments, if we will stand up for him, if we will be on his side, if we'll be on his side in this, okay, there will be a blessing. There will be a reward. He promised it, okay? So whose side are we on when we keep our mouth shut? I say we got to speak up for God, and there is a blessing in it. It may seem that the world penalizes us. That's okay if the world penalizes us. We got the secret knowledge. I'm going to be rewarded. All I got to do is wait, hang in there, and surely God's reward will come. And at the end, when we're at the last of our days, and they're about to plant us in the ground, we want to look back and say, I stood up for the Lord. I stood with the Lord. For me and my house, we went all out. We gave it all we had. And boy, that's the thing that we want to be able to say, when we come down to our last days. And for all we know, these are our last days. Let's make them count. For all of eternity, there are many days. We got these few. Let's make them count. Praise the Lord.